who they believe are linked to fraud and corruption in the Human Settlement Directorate in the city. And we really want to encourage them to continue with the good work. During their presentation of the second quarter report, July to September 2023, the department highlighted the efforts to address the backlog on title deeds. The portfolio committee was also informed of the campaign Title Deeds Fridays. Title deeds are very important in the lives of our people. We would appreciate if we can get a feedback on how far the campaign is. Honorable members, reading through the two reports that will be presented today, there are still some provinces and metros who do not spend the allocated money. If we can be appraised, Honorable Minister, of the intended interventions. We are now on the next item, which is item 5, where we will receive the presentation of the performance of the department quarter 4 of the last financial year and quarter 1 of the current financial year. Honorable Minister, can I invite you to address the committee?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to open a bit and close my video so that you can, honorable members can see it's me. I'm just in cabinet space. I'll close the video.
And you look beautiful.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, good honorable members, the team. Let me first apologize for the Director General. He took ill while in Addis when they went to represent us, and he's been booked off, so he will not be able to join us. I've got the DDGs, all the DDGs have been a part of the meeting, together with the team that is responsible for strategy and monitoring. So DDG Ngongwe is here, DDGO is IGR, DDG Matupe, Corporate Services, DDG, Ditseho, Emergency Housing and Informal Settlement, DDG Dumalisile on the social housing and rental space. And then we've got as well the CFO who will lead in the presentation as the team presents today, together with, I think Ipeleng is also here, who is responsible for this, and DDG Mhlongo, who is responsible for policy. The advisors have joined together with the PLOs, both from Minister, DM, and the DG's office. Chair, let me appreciate this moment for us to present our fourth quarter and also our first quarter of the financial years, fourth quarter of 2023-24, first quarter of 24-25 financial years. Chair, as observed, indeed, at this particular time, all of us as honorable members would remember it was the time where we were in the height of the debate of the campaigns. And I must firstly appreciate the leadership of the Director General Muyemi, who joined in February this year, but hit the ground running in ensuring that during that time, where political leadership couldn't be in the department, there was stability and focus by the team in the department and all the senior managers who kept the fire burning for us. Secondly, Chair, I must say these two reports, especially the fourth quarter one, as we will be appearing before the committee, before the end of this month, we'll table. By the end of the month, we'll table our annual performance reports with audited financial statements, which will go into detail because this will be finally signed off by the Auditor General, but verified information in terms of performance. On the first quarter, I must say, Chair, if you look at it, the areas where we would not have done well would be the areas, for example, that would have required political leadership to be able to present, and that in terms of MinMec and MinTop, and that would have been a difficulty for the team. But quite a number of work has been done, and we've really started even monitoring and evaluation. We have started the 7th administration, first MinMec has set to start even ensuring that all of us as ministers and MECs and local government, we are in sync in terms of ensuring that the work continues, but we are able to ensure that we improve on our performance and holding each other accountable. Chair, I must say upfront, towards the end of the financial year, two provinces that we were worried about in terms of their spending, which was Free State and Northwest. Acknowledging that, for example, during the financial year, Treasury then in the midterm took money from provinces. This, despite us, were not comfortable, but that was a Treasury-driven process, not ourselves. We only took money in the Western Cape because of performance, and that money was redirected to Limpopo. Limpopo having recovered, if you look at our performance since I've been on the portfolio at that time, 2021, Limpopo was not doing well, but by the time we closed the sixth administration, Limpopo had turned around the corner and received additional funding for the first time in terms of that history of the province. So we were quite happy with that, with the intervention. In Free State, we had taken a decision that we needed to focus more on the asbestos issues. And I must say to members, even yesterday, I had a meeting with the Human Rights Commission who raised this matter sharply of asbestos roofs across the country and the need for us to pay attention. So we did acknowledge the importance of us removing those asbestos roofs. And in terms of payment, because it was driven by DBSA, and therefore the department in the province took longer or transferred a lot of money to DBSA towards the end or the last quarter. And that's why you see a chunk of the money when you look at that performance going into Free State at that time. With Northwest as well, it was an issue which we also carried into the new financial year, where quite a number of projects that were blocked were really unblocked. And in the process then, it was a pile of invoices that were paid towards the end of the financial year. And unfortunately, because the 200 million was taken by National Treasury, we had a deficit in terms of the money and the contractors that needed to be paid. So they were also carried over, but I have addressed it with MEC Mulapisi in the first MINMEC to say he needs to pay attention so that we do not have challenges in that. Chair, up front, as we present these two quarters, you note that there are two acting colleagues, acting DDG for emergency housing and informal settlements, because the appointed DDG is not because the position is vacant. The appointed DDG applied for incapacity leave during the month of May, and which then later in July, we received a letter from his doctors that he's fine. But based on Public Service Administration regulations and the Act, when a senior manager is declared incapacity, the process that needs to be done is that government-owned process must be complied with. For example, in the SOMA space, whereby we are assured that the individual can take especially decisions that relates to PFMA, and that we only need that report from them, and then he should be back to work once the report is given. So we are hoping that that process can be concluded in time so that we do not have a problem in that regard, because if you do not follow that process, then you have a difficulty tomorrow. When the individual has not taken correct decisions, you can't take them to DC because you would not have complied with your own regulations. So that's the process, or even in terms of financial misconduct. You can't even say, I can open a case of corruption or anything against that individual because you have not followed your process. So that's why it's important. With DDG Corporate Services, Chair, the DDG Corporate Services, when I arrived in the portfolio, was already in suspension, was home. I brought her back in 2021, but we agreed that she will be in work while going through the DC. We are at the final stages of that DC. That relates to the case of appointment of 9 CLOs that Public Service Commission found against the department and her, and asked her to go to court to reverse that decision and get a labor court. Labor court found that her action were inappropriate, and therefore she needed also we needed to terminate. So we've terminated the CLOs, and consequence management needed to continue. We are at the final stages of that DC process. Once it's done, we will communicate to the portfolio committee the outcome of the DC. So I needed to explain those two colleagues in the department who are acting. It's not because there are vacancies. We have only few vacancies at chief director level. At DDG and DG level, they're permanently employed. And also across the department, I think we have got funded posts, which are about 10. So our vacancy rate, Chair, is very low in the department. In the entities, we have a vacancy of the CFO in NHFC, which the board has advertised and are currently filling. In NHBRC, both CEO and CFOs are permanently employed. In HDA, CFO and CEO are permanent. In NHBRC, the only position that is vacant there is of the COO. We had to check whether we still need the position in terms of the work. Finally, the board has come to say they do need the position, and also they've requested concurrence, so we will be filling that post. In HDA, we've got CFO and CEO appointed. We have decided that we no longer need the position of the COO, and therefore killing it. So we will not be appointing there. In SHRA, we've got what we call corporate manager, because the Act does not talk about CFO, talks about corporate manager. So we've got full executives, except that the board written to me to request concurrence of terminating the services of the CEO on the basis of performance. That is the matter that is still in process. Once I've requested additional information, once the board has given me all the information, we'll be able to either grant or decline the concurrence. But I must say to portfolio committee members, the matter is currently in Labour Court because the CEO has taken SHRA to Labour Court. In PPRA, we do not have vacancies at senior level. Both the CEO, the CFO, and other executives are permanently employed. And then as well there, we had a position of a COO that we felt that we do not need in terms of the size and shape of the entity. In CISOs, that's where we had a challenge. We've not had a permanent CEO or chief ombudsman for a year. This because the board then submitted a request for concurrence, but there were issues there. For example, they would have done a process that I felt that was compromised, did not follow the process. When we asked questions, there were quite a lot of potential litigation areas that I felt that the board could not answer me sufficiently in the manner that they have done. So we have requested the board to re-advertise and start the process afresh. For example, the advert would not have corresponded with the shortlisted candidates in the basis that they would have said a legal person, but you found that in the top 3 recommendation, there was people who do not have legal background. Similarly, number 1 would not have scored higher, number 2 scored second, but the 3rd person was recommended. So we did reject that process and ask them to start because we felt that it was compromised. So that's where I do not have a permanent CEO or a chief ombudsman chair in that regard. Just to think that it's important for us to upfront highlight to committee members in terms of the work. We still have problems in terms of monitoring and evaluation, which will tighten up, especially for our provinces and our municipalities. We currently engagement with National Treasury for the next financial years so that we can tighten up our grant framework and conditions, Chair, so that we are able to ensure that we spend money wisely, but we are able to spend money at the right places and we can have output in the manner that we need. So that's my input, Chair, up front, just highlighting some of these critical areas that I think is important up front as the minister to be able to give to the portfolio committee. Following that, Chair, as I requested, I will need to leave the meeting and I do sincerely apologize, but I'm going to try my level best to ensure that I appear before the committee. Last week we were abroad, all of us, and that's why I couldn't come. And today we've got a critical meeting that relates to, it's called a National Treasury Committee, which I sit in. It looks at application for additional funding. We've made an application that relates to our disasters, the people that are still distressed and we run out of funds. So I'm requesting permission to be able to attend such a meeting, Chair, so that we are able to justify the request that we are making. But I do commit going forward, Chair, to collaborating and working together with the committee and making sure that I am available, especially as a minister, for the committee to be able to engage with us and hold us accountable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think it's well understandable. When you are ready to leave, you can just quietly leave. We want to thank you very much for your time and for your commitment. Thank you very much. CFO.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members of the Human Settlements Portfolio Committee, colleagues, good morning. I'm not going to go through the introductions because the Honorable Minister has already done that. We are here as a Department of Human Settlements today to present two reports in front of the committee. The first one that we are going to start with is the fourth quarter report for the period that ended on the 31st of March 2024. And the second one is the one that is ending on the 30th of June. I'm here with my colleague. I'm going to request. I am sharing the screen. I don't know if Eva is showing on the other side. I am going to request my colleague, Plein to take us through the fourth quarter. When she's done, I'll come at the end and do a submission on the financials, and then we will move into the second one. If that is okay, Chairperson, can I ask our colleague Plein to take us through the performance information? Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is in order. Plein.
Thank you, CFO, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, members of the Portfolio Committee, and the management of the department. This is the quarter four non-financial performance information. We're going to present the overall budget structure, non-financial performance, and financial performance. Next slide, please. We are presenting this report to the members of the Portfolio Committee for guidance. Next slide, please. Honorable Chairperson, in our APP, we have 5 programs. Program 1, Program 2, 3, 4, and 5. In the next slides, next slide, please. Program 1 is mainly about the leadership and management in the department. Program 2 is about our planning policies, research, and strategies. Program 3 is mainly about the upgrading of informal settlements across the nation. Program 4, it is about our social housing stock together with the CRUs. Program 5, it is about the affordability in terms of the gap market. Next slide, please. This is the criteria that the department follows as we determine the performance of the department in terms of the APP. Green will represent accomplishment of the planned targets. Red is about the targets which were not achieved or which are still in progress. In quarter 4, we are standing at 90% with only 10% of target which were not achieved. Next slide. In this slide, we are showing the performance per program. And as you can see, we have only 4 targets which were not achieved by the end of quarter 4, which is 2 under program 1 and 1 under program 2 and 1 under program 3. The details are in the next slide. This is the performance trends across the whole financial year. As you can see there, we were only down in quarter 2. And the performance moved up. We ended the year with 90% of our performance in terms of the APP. Next slide, please. Under administration, which will include program 1, which will include the executive support, the CFO office together with the corporate services, we have only under executive support, there is 1 target which was not achieved, which was mainly about the internal audit plan. We had only 1 audit which was not accomplished due to its complexity, and only 1 part was done. Next slide, please. We are saying under corporate services, we had the digital transformation strategy and implementation plan, which we anticipated doing by the end of financial year. And that was still in process when we ended in quarter 4. Under the CFO office, we have all these targets which were planned not being achieved, which is our grant framework and set aside, and all the assessments report on the monitoring of grants in provinces and metros were done. Next slide. Under program 2, the majority of targets were mainly about the monitoring of reports And those reports were submitted, which is about the performance in entities, in our allocations to PDAs, and also in terms of the monitoring of business plans. And we also accomplished policy foundation, the research agenda, and the intergovernmental program, which was also successfully implemented. Next slide, please. Chairperson, under program 3, we had planned to, in terms of the TID, we did all the elements as expected, provided feedback on the business plans that are being monitored by the National Department. And we also provided support to the provinces and metros in terms of the upgrading and also develop emergency housing guideline. The only shortfall was only on the assessment of business plans for the metros. Only Nelson Mandela, Goreleni, City of Cape Town, and Mangaung business plans were not available by the end of financial year. Next slide, please. Under program 4, which was about monitoring the performance of the rental housing program and CRU, those reports were submitted. And also we managed to submit the report in line with the delivery targets as noted under program 5. Next slide, please. The CFO will take us through the financial part.
Apologies for that, Chairperson. I was struggling to unmute. Let me put it on the slide mode. On the financial performance, Chair and honorable members, we are showing a cumulative because we are combining all the quarters and our financial year is end on the 31st of March 2024. So the information that we are submitting is cumulative. It includes the financial performance for the financial year that ended on the 31st of March 2024. The budget, as per the programs that my colleague has spoken about, it was 31.7 billion. And out of the 31.7 billion, we spent 98%. We were left with 531 million that was not spent. On the economic classification, we are able to pick up the compensation of employees. We underspent by 25 million. The goods and services, there was an underspending by 54 million. And the payments of capital assets by 451 million. The reasons for the underspending on the compensation of employees, as I said earlier, we had underspent. If we remember last year, we received a cost containment from National Treasury. And the cost containment was stipulating that before we can fill in the positions, we are supposed, Persal was locked for the entire financial year. Before we can advertise the positions, the Minister of Human Settlements is required to write to the Minister of DPSA. The Minister of DPSA is supposed to write to National Treasury, and we were allowed to get a permission for us to fill in the positions. Once the permission was granted by DPSA, that's when we'll be able to fill in the position. So the lengthy process that was put on by the cost containment is one of the reasons for underspending. However, one of the other reasons is that we anticipated that we would have reviewed and finalized the organizational structure by end of the year, but we haven't done that. But this year we are thinking that we are going to finalize the organizational structure, and then we will be able to fill in the positions because the structure that we are working with is not aligned to the budget structure. Under the goods and services, I did indicate that we had underspent there. The underspending on the goods and services is mainly on the 3 line items. Number 1, we had an outdoor marketing campaign that was worth 30 million. By end of the financial year, there were invoices that were submitted, but because of the supporting documentation, we closed the year, have not paid those invoices because we're waiting for the supporting documentation. We did approach National Treasury to request for a rollover. We are still waiting for the finalization of that process from National Treasury. And then the other underspending was the appointment for consultant for geomapping and reblocking of the informal settlements. As a department, we have got a panel of resource teams, which we call PRTs. When we went to the resource teams to request for quotations for them to do the reblocking and the geomapping, only one service provider responded on the invitation for proposals, and that resulted in a non-award. So that's why at the end of the year, because we had to restart the process, that's why we indicated that we did not spend the money. And the other line item was the implementation of the emergency housing support. By end of the financial year, as a national department, we were working together with the municipalities to come up with the SOPs so that we are able to do the disaster mitigation plans and the disaster awareness. But for this financial year, we had already started with the awareness programs across the provinces. The biggest under expenditure is the emergency housing fund. For the year under review, the implementation of the emergency housing fund was housed at the National Department of Human Settlements. However, there were challenges that indicated or that came when we were busy with that emergency response. One of them was the incomplete beneficiary list. You find that we'll receive a beneficiary list, and then when we send the contractor to go and erect the TRUs, you find that those beneficiary lists or those beneficiaries are non-existent. So that was one of the challenges. One of the challenges that the contractors came was the scatteredness of the projects. In areas like your Eastern Cape, you find that in one local municipality, these projects are far apart, and the terrain and the inaccessibility of the terrain. So this led to the withdrawal of the project of the contractors in those areas. And those led to the under expenditure. However, there was a commitment, and we had requested National Treasury for a rollover on the commitment that was incurred. And on the transfers, we, as end of the financial year, had done all the transfers. The only saving, because this is not an under expenditure, is a saving. It was on the UN Habitat. We left because we had budgeted that, because we are paying for the UN Habitat, which is the UN nations. We budgeted 3.3 million. However, only 3 million was paid to the UN Habitat. We had a saving of 243. And on the household is an area whereby we pay when the employees leave the department. That's when we pay. So there was a saving of the 329. And then on the emergency housing funds, these are the areas that we pay. Under goods and services, we've got assessments. This is when there is a disaster. We send NHPRC to go and do the assessments of the structures. We spent 3.7 million. And on the building materials, that's when in the informal settlements, there are fires. We know that in the Western Cape, there was a lot of fires. In KZN, the informal settlements, on the disasters that happened around April, the informal settlements, we give them building materials so that they can go back and rebuild. We spent 59 million. And on the TRUs, that's where the under expenditure happened on, because at the end of the financial year, only 17 was paid to the service providers to erect the TRU across the country. And we had a commitment of 90 million. This is where we had requested National Treasury for a rollover. On the payment of invoices, we are giving a total view. From the beginning of the financial year until the 31st of March, we processed a total of 6,044 invoices. Out of 6,044 invoices, only one invoice was not paid within 30 days. And this invoice that was not paid was in relation to the emergency housing response, whereby the building materials, the word delivered. However, there was a community disruptions. So that is where we were unable to get the building materials in time because of the disruptions that happened, and we couldn't process the invoice because we had to wait for the entire building materials to be delivered to the beneficiaries. So that's why we're not able. So we are alive to the fact that according to the Treasury regulations, one invoice or one supplier is too much that was not paid within 30 days. Hence, for the quarter under review, January, February, March, we had to put systems and controls in place, and we continue to process all invoices within 30 days. On the provincial grants, I'm going to start with the Human Settlement Development Grant as of the 31st of March. So these are the audited figures. These are the final figures that the provinces had spent on. You can see that during the year, and this is why the Honorable Minister had highlighted on, that during the year, 250 million due to non-performance on the grant was stopped from Western Cape Province and it was reallocated to Limpopo, whereby the allocation for Limpopo has increased from 943 and it went up to 1.2 billion, and Limpopo province was able to spend 100%, and the Eastern Cape province as well was able to spend 100%, Free State 98%. The two provinces that we are highlighting is Gauteng province and KwaZulu-Natal province, whereby they've spent 96 and 92 respectively. When we look at the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant, the performance here is not satisfactory because only 3 provinces had spent 100%, which is KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and Northern Province, whereas the other provinces, Eastern Cape, Free State, has spent 98, 99, and 98 respectively, and the other ones, we are putting them as red because they have spent under 85%. You can see that Gauteng was sitting at 82%, Limpopo 85%, Northwest was sitting at 75%, and then Western Cape was sitting at 60%. The Urban Settlement Development Grant as of 31st of March. The March is not end of the financial year for the metropolitan municipalities. March is the 3rd quarter. Hence, we are sitting with the 48, 46, and 45. Subsequent to these figures, you can see that there was also a stopping and reallocation. This is what the Honorable Minister spoke about, that this was done by National Treasury. Because each and every year, after the 3rd year, after the 3rd quarter, we look at the performances. Then on our side, we will sit down through our meetings, we will engage the metros, we agree, we ask them to submit the recovery plans. However, National Treasury as well, they do their own, whereby they invite us, they look at the performance of the metros, whereby it was concluded that the performance for Nelson Mandela, City of Ekurhuleni, City of Joburg was not satisfactory at that time. Sorry, City of Tshwane was not satisfactory at that time. And money was stopped and reallocated to Buffalo City. However, you can see that at this point in time, even though Buffalo City received additional 100 million, they were sitting at 55.7, and Nelson Mandela 51, and then City of Cape Town was sitting at 54%. But this is not end of the financial year, and we know that during the year under review, we had as well budget cuts that were effected. On the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant for the metros, the same, it was done. You can see that there were funds that were stopped and reallocated. Buffalo City, Nelson Mandela, Mangaung, City of Joburg, City of Tshwane, they were affected, whereby their performance was not satisfactory. Funds were stopped and reallocated to City of Ekurhuleni 61 million, and eThekwini received additional 60 million, and then City of Cape Town received an additional 70 million. You can see that City of Cape Town, when it comes to the informal settlements, they had spent 65.7. However, it is important to note that the end of the financial year for the metros is March. So it's June. When we are presenting the 1st quarter, we will be able to show how it looks like on the 2 grants that we are submitting, that we are transferring to the metropolitan municipalities. However, as a national department, we are saying there are pockets of excellence. However, there are areas of improvement. One of the biggest areas that we are saying we need to pay attention to is the integrated planning, budgeting, monitoring, and reporting. We still need to improve in that. And also, most of the reasons that are submitted by the provinces and the metros, it's the procurement processes, which we think that it plays an important and integral role on us not meeting the targets. And we are saying that we need to pay attention to that. So these are the areas that we are highlighting as end of the financial year. When we start the new financial year, these are where we need to pay special attention to. Now, we are recommending that the Portfolio Committee notes the quarter 5 performance of the department and provide guidance. Thank you, Chairperson and members.
Thank you very much. I would have wished that we do the other, but I know last week there was a concern that no, we need to discuss after every presentation. Honorable Poole, do you want us to discuss or continue with the other presentation? They are almost the same. What's your view?
You can proceed, Chair.
To the other presentation?
Yes.
Okay. CFO, let's get the other presentation and we'll discuss them both.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are going to follow the same format. I'm going to request my colleague Plein to take us through the performance information, and when it's done, I'll come and present the financial performance. Plein.
Thank you, CFO. Thank you, Chair. This is the Q1 performance of the department. Next slide, please. We are starting with the same format. Can we go to the next slide? The programs are the same as in Q4. With regard to performance during Q1 of 2024-25, we started with 83% achievement and 17% of the targets were not achieved. Next slide, please. We are showing here the trends in Q1. We are saying we had 30 targets which were approved, which are in the APP for 24-25. In Q1, we achieved 25, 5 were not achieved, 2 are sitting under program 2 and 3 under program 5. Next slide, please. Under program 1, as I indicated, which we have executive support, corporate services, and the CFO's office, we are saying under executive support, the plan targets which relates to compliance to statutory prescripts, which is about the payment of invoices within 30 days and submission of quarterly reports, that was achieved. And the plan targets under corporate services, submission of MTF, human resource plan, and implementation of ICT implementation plan also was successfully done. And under CFO's office, also the allocations to designated group together with assessments were done. Next slide, please. Under program 2, Chair, we have the target which was not achieved, which is about the review of the Housing Act, mainly because it is dependent on the finalization of draft white paper, of which in Q2 we only had draft, and as soon as white paper is finalized, then the process for review of Housing Act will resume. And then we have 5 human settlement programs which were identified in implementation priority development areas, and the research report as planned was done. Under entities oversight, which program 2, Chair, it has 2 branches there that are contributing to it. That's about policy, research, strategy and planning, and entities oversight, IGR and M&E. Now the branch entities has managed to do their performance, their monitoring of the entities and monitoring of provinces in terms of the business plans for both HSDG and USDG. Inception report, this one relates to the study which was not accomplished in Q4, which is about the implementation design evaluation on priority development areas. That study is continuing in the current financial year. This one of 15 intergovernmental relations program, the minister has alluded to it to say there was a bit of delay in terms of the monitoring or quarterly sittings of the MINMEC and technical MINMECs during the electoral end of electoral cycle. Next slide, please. As in this slide, Chair, we are saying because it's Q1, colleagues have indicated here the turnaround plan in terms of those targets that are not achieved. And as I've already indicated that the department has initiated a stakeholder engagement in order to be able to deal with this Housing Act review. And also will ensure that the meetings as planned will be able to be done. The one meeting is already held by 30th of June, 2024. Next slide, please. All the planned targets under informal settlement upgrading were achieved. The disaster awareness session, provision of support to both provinces and metros, and together with the mitigation plans and the emergency housing response where plans were developed. Next slide, please. Under program 4, which is about the social housing, that includes the rental and the CRU program, all the planned targets were achieved. And also there was also the oversight that was done to SHRA, Tenanted Social Housing Stock, and the rental housing tribunals. And under program 5, as I indicated, there are 2 targets which were achieved, which is about the provision of support to provincial departments in terms of registration of title deeds and in terms of the implementation of catalytic projects, 50 catalytic projects. In the next slide, we are showing the turnaround plan for the 3 targets which were not achieved, which is about the support in terms of the delivery on BNGs. This was mainly about the site visits which were needed to have been done to 9 provinces. And we are saying that we're looking at resources optimization and reprioritization in order to be able to provide the support to projects. And that is the same for support with regard to delivery of service sites. And with regard to first home finance, the department was unable to lead the first home finance champion forum, mainly because of the whole process of the change of government and the end of the term. And that now is being addressed. Next slide, please. The CFO, thank you, Chair. CFO will continue with the financial performance.
Okay, thanks, Ipiling. Chairperson and members, on the financial performance. Oh God. My laptop is freezing. Okay, on the financial performance, this is the financial year that started from the 1st of April 2024 to the 30th of June 2024. The total budget is 33 billion, and the top part talks to budget allocation per program. As the programs that my colleague has spoken about, we have got administration, program 2, integrated human settlements with 22.7 billion. This is where the biggest grants are sitting, the human settlement development grant and the urban settlement development grant. Program 3 is the informal settlements. This is where the informal settlements partnership grants for both the provinces and the metros are sitting. And then rental and social housing, that's where the allocation for SHRA is sitting, and the affordable housing. So as of end of the first quarter, we had spent only 5.1, which is 16% of the total allocation. The bottom part is now taking the 33 billion, putting it as per the economic classification, whereby we are able to see the split between how much are we getting for the compensation of employees, which is 433 million. And as of end of the first quarter, we are sitting at 23%. The goods and services, which is 523, we are sitting at 20%. And the transfers and subsidies, we are sitting at 16%. And the payments of capital assets is where our emergency housing response is sitting. We are sitting at 8%. The next slide is giving us the breakdown of the transfers. We're able to see that for the first quarter, we had only transferred the grants to the provinces, because the grants to the metros, they were still in their fourth quarter. It was not yet, hence they're reflecting a 0, not yet been transferred. They were transferred subsequently around July. And then on the entities, we had already, for the quarter under review, transferred to SHRA. We had also transferred to the Housing Development Agency. And the other ones, you can see that the community schemes ombuds, due to the budget cuts, they are no longer gaining from the fiscus. And on the below bottom is where we are showing the departmental transfers. The next slide is giving us the split on the emergency housing response. The travel and subsistence is what we are referring to as the temporary emergency accommodation. When we remember there were emergencies in the Eastern Cape and in the Western Cape, whereby the people in the informal settlements, they were covered in water. We had to immediately remove those people from their homes and give them a safer accommodation. So we were able to relocate them. Hence, we are calling it travel and subsistence non-employees. So this one is the emergency accommodation. We had already spent 8 million. This is when we moved the beneficiaries that were affected in Eastern Cape to a safer, different accommodations. And then for the building materials, we had already spent 18 million. And then for the temporary residential units is 36. So we can see that for this financial year, we are really moving. On the first presentation, on the temporary residential units, for the whole financial year, we had spent 17 million. So you can see that for this year, there is a progress. On the temporary residential units, we are already, as of the first quarter, we are sitting at 36 million. So it shows that we are really moving when it coming to our emergency response. And on the payment of invoices within 30 days, as I said earlier on our first presentation, that we have put the controls in place. For the quarter under review, we had processed 991, and all of them were paid within 30 days. When we go to the provincial expenditures, the Human Settlement Development Grant, so this is quarter one. The total allocation for the human settlements was 13.6 billion. Out of that, we have transferred 3.7. Now, when we match the first presentation and the second presentation, all those provinces that were reflecting 100% expenditure, they were showing signs of overspending, that they are really, because of the budget cuts, most of the provinces that were affected by the budget cuts, because we had a midterm budget cuts, and they had to go and request that the service providers or the contractors should slow down. You can see that now we are looking at what we have transferred vis-a-vis what had been spent. When we look at KwaZulu-Natal, they have spent more than what we have transferred, but however, they are still within their allocation because they came back and said they were impacted by the budget cuts. When you look at Limpopo, the same as Limpopo, they were also saying that we are impacted because we have got contractors on the ground. Last year, we gave them additional 250 million, so they had to work hard to spend the entire allocation, but now they are showing signs of pressures. When you look at Mpumalanga as well, they're sitting as green, because Mpumalanga 43, it means by the first quarter, Mpumalanga had already spent half of their annual allocation. So they're also showing signs of that they've got pressures, they need additional funding. So all of the provinces that we have highlighted red, they're saying we've got moving projects on the ground. We have got contractors on the ground. However, the allocation is too little. Because if we remember when we presented earlier on, we did indicate that our grants have been cut. We were impacted by the cuts. So hence we are showing, as of the first quarter, we are showing signs of funding pressures. And most of this, they've come forward to say they are requesting for additional funding. And we have started the process of the MTech to see if they will be able to get additional funding. But Treasury says there is no additional funding that is coming our way. So this is the challenge that we are sitting with. And on the informal settlements upgrading partnership grant, we have pockets of excellence. You can see that KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, as well as Northwest, they've started very well on the ground. However, some of the provinces, they are still showing the signs of under expenditure, but this is the first quarter. Usually what we do around August, that's when we start having the recovery plans. So after the end of August, we are starting to look at the performance that everybody that is sitting under 30% or 40%, we request them to submit recovery plans. Because as we know that we were subjected to budget cuts, what we cannot afford is the money to go back to the revenue fund. So usually we start looking at the projects, looking at those provinces that have got moving projects that can absorb additional funding, so that we start the processes of looking at the recovery plans and the one that will be able to absorb. As I said earlier on the previous, to say that March is end of the financial year for the provinces. However, it was the third quarter for the metros. Now, June is end of the financial year for the metros. So we can see now that the metros, out of the 8 billion, they had spent 7.5. And most of the metros that were sitting as red on the other side, they are sitting now as green. The only funds, because this is the information as of the 31st of August. This is the time whereby metros submit their financial statement to Auditor General and to National Treasury and to us. So we use that information, but however, this is unaudited. So when we looked at that information, the only metro that indicated that there will be funds reverting back to the revenue fund is Nelson Mandela Bay of the 12.7 and the city of Cape Town on the 7 million. However, all of them, they have indicated that even though they did not spend 100%, 128, they are submitting. We are already sitting with the request for the rollover. They are submitting requests, of which as National Department, we are supporting. And the last column is giving us the reasons why they are sitting with the underspending as the metros. So out of the 7.4 that was spent, 148 was not spent. However, 128, we are having rollover a request that we have submitted to National Treasury, only 19, but these are unaudited figures. We are still waiting for the final audit. My system is freezing. The last is the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant. It is the same because they are sitting at 97.2%. So we can see an improvement from March to June as of end of the financial year. But however, there were interventions that were done by the National Department for us to be sitting here. Around February, there was a special MINMEC that was called and chaired by the Honorable Minister with the mayors of all the metropolitan municipalities and the MMCs to discuss the underspending and the recovery plans. So we can see that from that meeting around February, there was really indeed an improvement because all of them, they were requested to submit their recovery plans. And we had to commit to making sure that the recovery plans that we are putting down as metros, it yield results. You can see that there was really a big improvement on the recovery plans that were discussed and all the interventions that we made, because also on the Informal Settlements Upgrading Partnership Grant, Buffalo City is the one that has indicated 1.3 that will revert back, and Nelson Mandela 16.6 million. However, the other ones, they indicated that on the monies that were not spent, they had already applied for the rollover. We have received the documents and they've been submitted to the National Treasury. The areas of improvement that we are putting forward, yes, we are agreeing, but we are saying that we need to strengthen our intersectoral collaboration. We agree that as human settlements, we need other spheres of government to be able to working with us so that we can meet our mandate as human settlements. The last slide, we are recommending that the Portfolio Committee notes our Q1 performance of the department and provide guidance. Honorable Chairperson and members, I thank you.
Thanks very much, CFO. Thanks very much, together with your colleague, for the presentation. Honorable members, can we interact with the presentation? Honorable Mapiti, followed by Honorable Gakakilwe, followed by Honorable Dlamini, in that order. Honorable Mapiti, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and a very good morning to colleagues, and thank you to the department for the presentations as well. Thank you to yourself, Chair, for allowing us to take this meeting online. It's very much appreciated. So thank you for allowing that to take place. I think the first is just to welcome the presentations and to thank the presenters for what they've presented. Chair, I only have two questions that I wanted to put forward. The one to the Minister in relation to the Emergency Housing Fund. And firstly, just one would like to understand in which, when a province does experience a natural disaster, noting the fact that those particular funds are centralized within the national department, what is the process in which a municipality or a province requests access to that particular fund to assist those who have been impacted by natural disasters? It could be floods, it could be whatever the case might be at that particular time. And maybe if we can just be taken through what is the period in which those resources then become made available to the affected area and the affected residents of that particular area. Then secondly, in regards to Program 5, I note there, for example, that out of the targets that were there, 2 have been achieved and 3 haven't. And for the 3 that haven't, there is a note there regarding the fact that the target has not been met on the basis, or at least in regards to the delivery of BNG units. And it's cited there as the fact that the department had to assist in disaster intervention from national. So the reason why I'm raising that point is to understand whether I'm understanding this correctly, that the target was not met on the basis that there were disasters that took place, which then led to the target not being met. And I'm just trying to find clarity to understand how those relate to each other. And 2, noting the fact that the minister has publicly stated that the department is best suited to handle the disaster management, or at least the emergency housing fund, that it's best placed within the national department. But yet it's also now a reason in which a target is not being met under Program 5. It just doesn't make sense. So I'd just like to understand why that is the case. And the following target as well, support provided to provinces and metros in the delivery of service sites. Again, it notes the fact that disaster intervention was the reason in which this particular target was impeded. So just to get some clarity, Chair, on this particular point. And then in regards to the finances or the budgets, I note, and I stand to be corrected, that the reappropriation of budgets that have been allocated to municipalities and provinces, going forward, it is no longer going to be where municipalities or provinces don't spend their funds, that money is then reallocated to other provinces or municipalities. And I'm basing this based on the presentations that we had last week in regards to how municipalities and provinces will be assisted in ensuring that they not only spend their budgets, but there's also value for money in how provinces spent. And I think this was a point that was really made eloquently in the last meeting, to say that the spending of budgets does not necessarily mean that there's delivery on the ground, or does not mean that, in fact, communities are actually receiving housing opportunities. So just an understanding of the new process, and noting that this was a previous quarter, but that to confirm that, in fact, that is not the way in which the department is going to continue in terms of unspent funds. And you see there in the provinces that have been listed in red that it is indeed a crisis point, I think, for some provinces who are not meeting the requirements. And this is where now the points that were being made last week around consequence management is now, how do you deal with the province that has failed, or that is failing to spend their budgets and is not actually performing, what is the mitigations that the department then puts in place to handle those particular issues? And I think this is where now we need to see that particular presentation of last week taking form where provinces are not necessarily performing. And then I note the beginning part around block projects and the fact that currently we are sitting with just above 3,100 block projects in the country. But can maybe if the department is able to just indicate where the highest number of those projects or block projects are, which province is experiencing that highest number. I think that will also be helpful for our own oversight purposes, so that we are able to visit those provinces that are very much affected by the delays in projects for whatever reasons that may be. And then I think the last thing, Chair, is in regards to the list, the housing list. I might have missed it, Chair, please correct me, but just to maybe receive an update from the Minister as to how far are we with the digitization of the list? In what sense can people expect that particular process to be completed? Is there a timeline? I do note that there may have been a presentation in one of the meetings which was Chair held 2 weeks ago, in which I may have missed that. But if it is possible just for the department to just indicate the timeline around the digitization of the housing list, I think that would be very much important. And lastly, Chair, then I close, it's just that to understand from the department sides in regards to the housing needs register, how exactly can, in particular, public representatives at various levels of government who are assisting individuals who are on that particular list in finding out updates as to how far they are, who do we direct that particular issue to? I think it's very important, because I think many people, particularly on that list, have been on that list for decades, for many years. And so just to understand who could those issues be addressed to, just to be able to give feedback as well to communities that remain on that list. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Piti. Honorable Kakilo.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and officials from the department. I've got some few questions, and then let me appreciate the very informative presentations from the department, and also note that for Q1, there's a vast improvement noticed from what has been presented. So, Chair, I'll go straight to the questions. But most of my questions, not even most, all of them, they will be based on the performance of Q4. On page 17 of Q4 report, it is mentioned that the department keeps track of provinces and metros reports on housing program execution. Does the department monitoring of reports involve verifying the submitted reports? For instance, if visiting project sites or using the investigations? If not, why is the department not doing site visits? And then the second one, understanding the underspending on the allocated budget not only affects the department's performance, but it also denies many people their rights to adequate shelter, as enshrined in our constitution. And it is even worse when our people have been affected by a disaster. The reports note that the department could not effectively utilize the emergency funding because of various factors. Among those is the withdrawal of appointment contractors. due to scattered projects. Though the previous speaker, Honorable PT, has indicated about the issue of the disaster. So looking at what is exactly happening, the vastness and the scattered projects, the question with regard to this is, has the department thought of offering incentives to the contractors who continue to serve the department despite the scattered projects to guarantee adequate housing for our people? And then the third one, 4 provinces, Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest and Western Cape, performed poorly on their informal settlement upgrading partnership grants, failing to spend half of their allocated funds. What are the underlying reasons for these provinces' poor spending? And what are the national department's plans to improve the province's performance on the allocated funds? And then the other one, Chair, the 3 Gauteng metros have failed to spend half of their allocation on the urban settlement development grants. What are the reasons for the poor performance, and what measures will the national department put in place to support and improve this municipality's performance on the grant? And then lastly, Chair, provinces' performance varies when compared to the previous quarter, but Gauteng province consistently fails to spend at least half of its allocated funds. Even in the 4th quarter under review, they also failed to spend. What assistance and support is the department giving to the struggling Gauteng housing department? That was my last question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Mine are just short questions. The first one, Chair, is the suggestion to the committee. Currently, I'm not satisfied with the parliamentary oral system of asking questions. And I think in our meetings, we should be granted a space where we can come and lay down case-by-case issues where the department comes and responds to us with those specific cases in the meetings that we have coming forth. It is taking quite some time to get written responses when it comes to those particular cases. But my first question would be with regards to the emergency housing, in particular in KZN for the flood victims. I want to know, the department on record, how many families were recorded with those who needed housing, and how many of those families have been assisted in terms of number-based? Because we see that they keep submitting memorandums to the municipality saying that the emergency housing that they've been allocated are now unsafe, they've been overcrowded. What is causing this backlog in then finalizing this emergency housing for the residents of KZN? And then my second question goes to, what is the redress for provinces whose grants have been reallocated to other provinces for the missed opportunity on the people on the ground? What happens to them once the grants have been reallocated? What is the redress process? Are they left? Do they wait for the next period? Or what is then the intervention in the interim in that regard? And then also, when we speak about monitoring, my request is that in the presentations, you take us through what exactly entails the monitoring, and it's not used as a bullet point, but you tell us that as the national department, when you monitor, what is it that you precisely do and what you particularly look for to ensure that the work that is said to be done is being done? And then finally, Chair, what is the vetting process for contractors? And are there contractors that you have on your database that have been blacklisted?
And do provinces use a system that is in sync with one another to see that if a contractor has failed in Gauteng, they can't possibly do work for the department in KZN, for an example? Is there a system such as that? And are they contractors that have been flagged by the department that are known to all the other provinces? Thank you very much. That is it on my side, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Poole.
Good morning, Chair. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
honorable members. Let me start by saying thank you for the presentations. My 3 questions is not based on the second slideshow, but the first one. And I want to concur with Member Mbali that said that emergency housing is something that everybody feel in all different constituencies. My question is, if you look at the graph talking to emergency housing and spending, there was an underspending, a huge underspending, and only 4% was spent in that capital as a temporary residential unit. And that is a concern. And my question is why and what was the real problems to underspend, while our people out there have a lot of concerns and problems when it comes to these kind of emergency housing. Then, secondly, I cannot leave it out. It was mentioned again by the presenter in the first slideshow that title deeds is a major concern. And yes, the 28 August report talks to it. Out of nearly 1 million registered title deeds on the system, only 29% over the 4 years was dished out to people that longing so long to become an owner of a property. And that is a huge problem. And recommendations was made by the AG that we have to redesign planning processes must take place and see to it that all provinces include all the MTSF indicators in all provinces. Mind the fact that they have targets low the MTSF standard, and still they cannot achieve their targets, and that is a problem. So we have to look in that and really monitor it, and the thing that the minister and whole department must, I think they have to get these provinces to hand them a particular business plan that a budget is allocated next to it exactly to increase the delivering of title deeds. And then if you look at the slide on the overall performance, 90% we achieved, 10% we didn't receive. My question is, what was the impact that the people of South Africa have to feel make up the 10% we did not achieve in the 23-24 book year? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Poole. If you can just lower your hand. Honorable Dlamini, also lower your hand so that if there are new hands, I'm able to identify. Thanks very much. CFO.
Thank you, chairpersons and members for the questions. I'm here with my responsible DDGs. I'm going to start with DDG Katlego to take us through the questions that were asked regarding the emergency housing and what the under expenditure on the informal settlements. Katlego.
Morning, Morning, Honorable Chair, honorable members, colleagues. Chair, the question from Honorable Mpiti was the first one was on what happens when the province experiences a disaster. What is the process of requesting the intervention? Chair, previously before we realized the function, what happened is that all the applications would go via the office of the MEC. And in some instances, you find that a local municipality submitted, but their application was not even processed within the province, such that they never even received assistance from us. So what we have now changed is that any local municipality that gets affected by a disaster, they send it directly by us directly as National Department of Human Settlements. It's no longer via the office of the province and so forth. So we've opened up for any sphere of government to contact us, because remember, we are working closely with the provincial disaster management centers and the municipal disaster management centers. So that's where we get all the reports of incidences that occur. In the case of Western Cape, we are even in their automated system where I get on a daily basis, I get notifications of incidences that have occurred. And as such, we are able to dispatch our teams that are assigned for that region to go and verify whether indeed the incident has occurred. Because in some instances, Chair, we get a notification that there was a fire incident, but when you get to site, the community doesn't even know what you are talking about. So that is why it's even important that whenever we get notifications, we are able to go down there and verify. And our turnaround time of verifications is 24 hours. So immediately when we get a notification, our team is already dispatched to go and work together with the disaster management centers, because in as much as we centralized the emergency housing response fund, we didn't take over the disaster management aspect in terms of the mandate of the National Disaster Management Center and their institutions at the provincial and local municipalities. So the resources that needs to be availed, it depends on the type of fire, the type of disaster incident. For example, we've got 4 emergency housing interventions. The first one is the restoration intervention, which is where we provide building materials for shacks that have been destroyed. And the second intervention is the rebuilding. The rebuilding is where now we construct temporary residential units, TRUs, for destroyed mud houses or for completely destroyed permanent houses. Because remember, the trick with the fund, the emergency fund, is that according to the National Housing Code, you cannot construct any permanent structure using the fund, because all permanent houses are funded through the HSDG. So our fund is restricted to the immediate relief. Hence, all these temporary measures that you see in our interventions. The third intervention is the provision of temporary emergency accommodation. In a case that has already been mentioned by the CFO, we experienced prolonged rains in Eastern Cape and Western Cape, and the immediate is that all the informal settlements that were submerged in water, you have to immediately evacuate those families out of the danger zone and put them in mass care centers. But unfortunately, our experience with mass care centers, referring to the 2022 KZN floods, we experienced incidences where there were acts of GBV, where there were attempted rape and so forth. And the minister directed that going forward, he no longer wants to see people in mass care centers for more than 72 hours. That is why we activated the temporary emergency accommodation, such that when they are taken out of the submerged informal settlements, they are then sent to a mass care center, which is a community hall and so forth. And then we do the beneficiary administration of who's there, and then we link them to the nearest available accommodation within the proximity of where the incident has occurred. So that is the third intervention. The fourth one is the repairs of partially damaged houses. You would recall that there were recent tornadoes in KZN, Tongaat, where roofs were blown off. There were strong winds in Western Cape. So in terms of the engineering practice, before you fix any house, you must send structural engineers to go and assess the type and extent of damage in that house. And then after we receive the assessment report, that is when we are able to appoint a contractor, either through participating in contracts that are at provinces and municipalities, or from our own panels of contractors. So the repairs, we got stuck because, for example, in the KZN Tongaat, we received 3,860 households whose roofs were blown off by the strong winds. And when you multiply that by the rate of fixing whatever that was damaged there, you are looking at 990 million required to fix just the partially damaged houses. Current financial year in our emergency housing fund, we were only allocated 496 million. So if for one intervention of repairing the houses, you are sitting close to $1 billion, that's what prompted us to submit the request for additional funding, which the minister had indicated earlier that she is requesting to be excused to go and attend that meeting that will focus on our application for additional funding. So we are awaiting eagerly the approval of that additional funding so that we can assist everyone that whose house was damaged by the strong winds. So that is the only intervention that I can say we have not been able to respond in terms of finalizing what we need to fix because of budget constraints. The targets that were not met on disasters in terms of the poor performance in the previous financial year, the centralization of the function required that in the very same year that we centralized the function, it required that we find synergy with all other spheres of government, because the disaster management aspect, in terms of the 4 aspects of disaster management, your preparedness, your response, your recovery, and your mitigation, they don't necessarily lie with us as the national department. There are other dependents that we rely on for us to be able to execute the 4 interventions. And as such, we spend a lot of time trying to find common ground with all the other spheres of government. And that resulted in us eventually issuing TRUs throughout the KZN and Western Cape towards the 3rd quarter of the financial year, the previous financial year, because our biggest ticket item on the emergency fund is the construction of TRUs. And with that having failed, or with us having issued the work at quarter 3, that resulted in us not being able to spend adequately. And notwithstanding the other matters that we have experienced at the community level, we have experienced the extortion in Eastern Cape, we've experienced the prolonged rainfall, we have factored in the fact that there was a December holiday break which halted the construction period, and the issue of unreliable beneficiary list that we get from disaster management centers. It's becoming a serious problem, Chairperson, because you can imagine if there's 4,000 people that needs to be processed and assisted immediately through the fund, the reliability of information plays a key role in us being able to assist everyone. And as such, as we speak, just yesterday, 2 days back in our EMT, we have resolved that we will be processing all the ID numbers that we receive from disaster centers into an automated system that is linked to the population register to verify the validity of the ID numbers prior to us committing budgets, because the process has been, we rely on the data we receive from the disaster centers, we process the purchase order. When we get to site, we find that there's a problem with the ID numbers. So we have breached that gap, Chair, in collaboration with our one of our entities. The support provided in terms of the implementation support on the ISUPG to assist with the poor performance. We have established dedicated work streams, Chair. And by dedicated work streams, I mean the ISUPG has got a lot of indicators in terms of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And we know that in terms of the planning aspects of a project, the budgeting, the implementation, and the formalization of these informal settlements, it takes longer. And that is why we have established work streams that will focus on those key indicators that are occupying a lot of budget in terms of the ISUP. We have started implementing those work streams. There's a work stream that is focusing on land acquisition. We monitor the progress there. There's a work stream that is focusing on geomapping of informal settlements in the country. To date, I can safely report that we have located 3,800 odd informal settlements out of the 4,035 that has been reported to be in the country. So we are close to reaching that 4,000 mark in terms of these work streams. There's a dedicated work stream that is focusing on EIAs and so forth to ensure that there is compliance with the National Environment Management Act. And we have also a work stream that focuses on the reblocking of informal settlements for all those settlements that have been budgeted for reblocking. So we have a progress report on each and every work stream. And lastly, Chair, the work stream on the permanent installation of infrastructure is monitoring the phase 3 informal settlements, where we are now supposed to give service sites to qualifying beneficiaries. So there is that synergy between all spheres of government in terms of these work streams, and we are starting to realize the benefits of those work streams. In terms of the incentives that we provide to performing contractors, unfortunately, Chair, whatever work that we do is linked to the subsidy quantums that have been approved in the sector. And there is no room to providing incentives. Instead, what we have done is that we are constantly monitoring who is performing and who's not performing. And in terms of the service level agreements, we are able to cancel purchase orders of those that are not performing, and then we issue to those that are performing. So that process is actually monitored closely on a monthly basis. The reason for the poor performance on the ISUPG is that historically, provinces and metros have been over committing in terms of the number of informal settlements that they put in a business plan. And that is a recipe for disaster. So what we have done is that we have guided the provinces and the metros to say, in terms of their upgrading strategy, they need to be prioritizing projects that are already at phase 3. This financial year, we've approved 399 informal settlements at phase 3. Phase 3 means we are installing bulk infrastructure, we are installing services, and then people get service sites. With the budget cuts and all the other limitations, we have guided them to say, in their turnaround strategy, now that we are mid-year in the financial year of the provinces, they must then redirect the unspent budget on the other phases towards phase 3, so that we are focus driven and we are able to close off a lot of informal settlements and produce more service sites. And in addition to the turnaround plan, the minister has directed that specifically in Gauteng metros that are not performing, she has directed that a dedicated war room or task team be established at a technical level to go and assist those 3 performing metros in ensuring that they deliver what is expected of them. Chair, I think I have addressed most of the questions, unless there is one that I did not attend to, and the members can just highlight it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Katlego. I'm going to request ADDG Matope to address the issue of digitalization and the timelines.
Thank you, CFO, Chair of the committee, and the members and the colleagues. Actually, I just wanted to say In terms of the digitization of the beneficiary list, we have been engaging SETA since last year, together with the minister, trying to ensure that when they come and present to the department in terms of the system that they are proposing to the department, in terms of engaging on what they are bringing and what the department is expecting. So the to and fro has been happening, the engagements in terms of what is expected by the department, and SETA has been going back and updating what the department is looking for. We even had a meeting where they presented a demo of the system to the department. And after that presentation of the demo, there are other issues that were still outstanding, because then we were requested that with SETA we have a workshop with the provinces and the municipalities, because they are the real end users of the system. So we had that workshop, and after that workshop, SETA then submitted a proposal to the department in terms of us committing, in terms of the commitment with them to proceed with designing the system. So the proposal, Chair, we have a team that has been appointed that is going to be presented that proposal, so that we, as we commit to the system being developed, we are sure as to what is going to be developed addresses the gaps that are in the current system, and that we have a system that is anticipated to ensure that all the problems that we are encountering now are addressed. So in terms of the timelines, Chair, we are looking at the end of the financial year, and hoping that as we work together with SETA, everything will go according to plan, Chairperson. So that is what we are working on. We are even having a meeting on Monday with SETA to take the team through the proposal that they have submitted to the department, so that we can have a way forward. Thanks, CFO.
Thanks, ADDG. Chairperson, Honorable MPT had raised questions regarding the non-achievement on the Program 5 and the block projects, and Honorable Poole has asked a question regarding the title deeds. I'm going to request the DDG responsible, DDG Dumalisile, to respond to those matters that were posed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members of the committee, and colleagues. Chair, I will respond to the questions that the CFO has already mentioned. And maybe let me start with the question that was asked by Honorable Poole with regards to the title deeds, which is a main concern. Chair, I do want to confirm that yes, indeed, we are the first ones to actually acknowledge the fact that we have a challenge with regards to the issuing of title deeds throughout the country. And we are currently sitting with a huge backlog in terms of the title deeds. However, I do want to correct the fact that all provinces do have actually included in their business plans and budgeted, or rather allocated fund for the title deeds program. I want to take the members a bit back and indicate that at some point in time within the sector, there was a dedicated fund which was actually ring-fenced for title deeds, where it was top sliced from the current HSDG, which is the Human Settlement Development Grant. Now, the focus was to make sure that at least we close the backlog, but that still did not actually assist. And the reasons that were actually identified by the team, that was a team of conveyancers that were appointed by National Department and allocated to provinces to actually drive this process. They then discovered quite a number of challenges that we as a country are sitting with, and that needs to be unlocked. And to that extent, our current minister has presented at the cabinet recently, where she has appraised cabinet in terms of the challenges that do exist on the title deeds program, why there has been delays, and also made some proposals that we are currently busy trying to implement. And just to cite one of the examples in terms of the major challenges that we are faced with, because we're sitting with quite a number of categories with regards to the title deeds. We have the pre-1994 category, we have the post-1994, we have the post-2012, and we have the current. Now, when you look at all these categories, none of them are without challenges. When you look at the pre-1994 stock or the backlog, these are the townships, the old townships in the former previously disadvantaged areas. Your township establishment processes were never concluded or completed. Now you're sitting with occupants of houses that in terms of the previous regime were renting those properties for 99-year, where they had 99-year leases. But all the township processes were never concluded. How do we then resolve that? And the minister's request was to say, let's run processes, and maybe when we come back and she presents again, there may be a special dispensation to kind of like consider everything in terms of the as-built of those townships, so that then at least they can be resolved. Similarly, with the post-1994 and the post-2012 and the current, the post-2012 and the current, the biggest challenge there was the fact that where we discovered that some of the provinces, out of pressure of the demand for the construction of the RDP houses in some of the areas, those houses were constructed with no services or bulk infrastructure. Now, with township establishment, there are quite a number of things that you need to comply with, including your bulk infrastructure, including your internal reticulation, and in the absence of those, then that township will never be proclaimed, and ultimately nothing will happen. So that's why members, when you go to your constituencies, you would find constituents members complaining to say, they have built an RDP for me, but I still don't have electricity, I still don't have water, I still don't have sanitation. It's because the underground infrastructure is non-existent and that township has not been concluded. So the minister wanted us to actually go back and look at all those challenges, identify them, profile them, but in her cabinet presentation, she has then requested that she is going to collaborate with departments such as water and sanitation, as well as cooperative governance, because this is happening in the space of the municipality, and the bulk infrastructure in most instances, it's delivered by water and sanitation, but over and above that, some of the municipalities in provinces are water authorities. They become responsible for providing such services. We come in terms of our conditional grants, we do internal reticulation and be able to build those houses. So we will continue to have these backlogs, but yes, in trying to resolve them, where we are able to resolve them, provinces have budgeted for such, and the metros have also budgeted for such. If you do an analysis of the business plans that have already been approved by the minister, you will notice that they have made provision for budget with regards to the title deeds, and they are running those processes in making sure that at least where we are able to do that, then we issue those title deeds. Members would have noticed, and I think the minister has raised it several times during the previous portfolio committees, to say there was also a decision by MINMEC where they have agreed as a MINMEC to try and accelerate the process of delivering and issuing the title deeds, especially those that have already been finalized and issued by the deeds office, because some of them were in the offices of municipalities and provinces. And that's why there was a dedicated program or campaign, which was a title deed Friday. And I think it has yielded very positive results, because within a short space of time, quite a number of them that were already in existence were issued to the rightful owners of those title deeds. But yes, it had its own challenges, because in some instances, provinces and municipalities were saying they are battling to locate some of the owners of the title deeds that have already been issued. So that's where we are in terms of that program. So in short, Chairperson, Honorable Pool, we are actually acceding to your observations to say we were the first to make those observations, and we were the first through the minister to come out publicly and acknowledge those challenges, but also to indicate what is it that we are doing to try and resolve such. Coming to the second matter with regards to I think it's Honorable Mpiti. Honorable Mpiti, yes, we presented last week the strategy on the stalled block projects. The minister went to town yesterday during the NCOP, where she presented, and I think it's in that meeting where she actually gave detailed information in terms of the provinces, in terms of the municipalities, where such information or such projects are actually residing. The ones that have been stalled, she actually went to town in terms of giving an account per province, per municipality, the ones that have been unblocked. Chair, through you, Honorable Mpiti, you would recall in the last meeting that there was a request by members that we should provide a detailed information that is more or less the same as what the minister tabled at NCOP yesterday. So in that regard, Chairperson, I would request that this one, if the Chairperson permits and the members, we pack it until such time we submit all the information that was requested. I think you did allude to that at the beginning or at the opening, during the opening remarks, Chairperson, that you still expect the department to submit all the reports that were requested. That detailed information is part of what was previously requested by the honorable members. The last one, Chairperson, is what still Honorable Mpiti raised. I think where he was finding a bit of discrepancy in terms of what we are raising as a reason for non-performance under Program 5. What we have committed to do, Chairperson, with regards to Program 5, particularly the BNG projects as well as the service sites, is that every quarter we would go to provinces based on the reports that we would have received and based on what they would have deemed to be achieved on the ground. We would then sample some of the projects, visit the areas, and upon visiting the areas, we will then go to the specific projects that we would have identified to go and verify as to whether indeed this work has actually happened. Now, during this particular quarter, members would recall that we had disasters that actually hit in different places at the same time that were massive in terms of the magnitude and damages. And based on that, there was a determination that was made by DG to say, let's actually take more officials to go and support. Yes, there was support from provinces, there was support from municipalities, but it was to enhance the human resources that was on the ground at that time, just to make sure that the colleagues who are actually the specialists in this area on the emergency, they have additional support. So that actually left us with a situation where we missed one or two visits in terms of both the BNG and the service sites with regards to the site visits. But Chair, we have since recovered, because within the same branch, Program 5, we then optimized the resources and took some of the officials within the branch to then go and do those visits, even if it was post the period that we were supposed to do them, just to make sure that we catch up on the lost time with regards to those two areas. Chair, I think I have covered all the issues that were raised in terms of my area. Oh, no, yeah, I've covered the block project as well. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, CFO.
Chair, and thank you so much. Honorable Kihakilo and Honorable Dlamini, they did ask a question regarding the monitoring of the projects, whether are we doing desktop and what does it entail. I'm going to request DDG Ngongo, as the monitoring falls within a branch, to take the committee through and respond to the questions. Honorable DDG Ngongo.
Thank you, CFO. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, honorable Minister and colleagues. In our effort of monitoring the projects, firstly, let me just indicate that at the National Department, we are doing monitoring one way or the other, simply because we are not at the implementation level. The other part has already been covered by DDG Dumalisile. We use the business plans, because business plans, that's where provinces and metros, they submit their business plans that give us the information on the projects that they are going to be implementing in a particular financial year. And those projects, before they get into the business plan, they are supposed to have been planned properly, and they are now ready to hit the ground. They will come with the implementation and plan together with the budget that is required. So when we are monitoring these projects, we are looking at the compliance, also in terms of the grants. As we know that our grants, they are conditional grants. There is an element of the financial monitoring together with the non-financial performance, which means, Honorable Chairperson, we need to monitor that the grants that are being approved by national, they are used for the purposes that they are intended to. And then the budget as per the project, also we need to be certain that the project that has been sent to the metros or the provinces, the milestones or the non-financial part, there is a relationship. For example, in order to address the situation where we don't see the budget being completed, but the project is still at the lower stages of implementation. So when we visit these projects, these are the things that we look at. But over and above that, also we also take into account the issues of the bulk, because the projects, before you can actually even see the slab or you see the house itself, there is bulk, there is infrastructure that needs to be installed before. So those are all the other areas that we need to take into account, so that we should not be expecting to see the house when actually we are still at the planning stage, where we are also addressing the issues of bulk. This is also what we call work in progress. When we are doing the monitoring of these projects and we do the report, we also take into account the work that has been done and where the money has gone into, including also the sourcing of the engineers and the technical teams in terms of the infrastructure. Honorable Chairperson, once we have done visited the projects, we will come up with a report that indicates whether there is also a relationship between the budget and the non-financial performance, and where there are areas of improvement that are required, or also where there are areas of consent in terms of the moving of the projects. Taking into account, Honorable Chairperson, that these projects, they already have got beneficiaries that are linked to them in terms of our housing subsidy system. So where projects, they are not moving at the right pace, it means also then the beneficiaries, they are going to be affected in a negative way. All this information, progress report and the recommendations that we do as a department, both financial and non-financial, they get presented to all the structures of human settlements, including the MINMEC, where also the honorable MECs also, they will have to take into account in terms of the progress of their projects and the financial implications. Chair, I will summarize that in that particular way. If you allow me, Honorable Chairperson, there was a question that was talking to the beneficiaries having to wait a longer period and not receiving the houses. I would like to respond that both the municipalities and the provinces, they do register beneficiaries in our National Housing Needs Register. This is where all the people that will be registering for their need for a house. And also in terms of the HSS, which is the Housing Subsidy System, this is where then we register, where provinces, they register their projects. And through this system also, that is where we are able to track the payments that have been processed per project through the business plans that I was alluding to earlier on. I want also then to bring the element that currently is the municipalities, provinces, and ourselves at national that do have the access to these systems, not to the members of the public, which is the reason why Minister is has elevated for the digitization, so that members of the public, they will be able to, using their cell phones, they will be able to check whether what is the progress that has been made, whether it's on the needs register in terms of whether my need has it been approved, have I been allocated to a particular project, which means then that request will have elevated from the needs register to the housing subsidy system. That is where then the beneficiary gets linked to a particular project, and also then that will enable also the individual to track the progress of that particular project, because that will give an idea in terms of when will I be able to get access to that, to get the house when it's completed. The last part, Honorable Chairperson, that I would just want to bring in is that when we look at our both the National Housing Need Register and our housing subsidy system, we have elevated the indigent. Minister has made a pronouncement to say, as a sector, let us prioritize those that are 70 years old and above. So through these two systems, we have been able to elevate them. And currently in both systems, we've got we've got 532,000 beneficiaries that are 70 years old and above. In the HSS, I must indicate, Chair, that let me start on the needs register. As of April this year, we had 510,000 of the people who are 70 years old and above through the system. What we did, we requested the provinces to clean up this data so that we've got the correct number of the people that needs to be prioritized. And as of September, that number has gone down to 324, because now it's giving us, the sector, the correct number of the people that we need to address. And we still have got 208,000. These are the beneficiaries that have been linked to the projects. And this is the priority that we are working towards. And the last point on this matter, Honorable Chairperson, is that this work is going to serve on the MINMEC, as we are now planning in terms of what do we do in terms of the implementation going forward. Of course, taking into account the budget cuts that we are going through as a sector. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Chair, as we wrap up, I think there are 3 questions that I need to respond to. The issue that was asked by Mr. Honorable Mpiti and Honorable Dlamini regarding the reallocations of funds from one performing province to the other. This is a complicated matter, and we still stand by what we presented last week, that reallocation is the last resort. We agree that before we can even reallocate, we need to have processes. As I was presenting, I did indicate that around August, that's when we start the processes to look at all the provinces and the performance. The complication comes in whereby, because the conditional grants are governed by the Division of the Revenue Act. Section 19 of the Division Revenue Act, it gives National Treasury to use their own discretion. Hence, when I was presenting on the performance of the urban settlements and on the performance of the metros, I did indicate that the reallocation was not done by us. And even Honorable Minister did indicate that the reallocation was not done by us. However, it was done by National Treasury, because the Division of the Revenue Act gives National Treasury to use their own discretion. So they can decide to say, but this province is not spending, and then they can initiate on their side to start the process, and then they gazette the process. So that is one thing. But however, we are saying, as we have submitted the strategy last week to say for this financial year, we are starting with the project readiness matrix and the procurement. The reason why we are doing that is that if there were funds that are not spent, and then those funds are not reallocated, and the rollover processes, it looks at the commitment. So if the SEM processes or there is no commitment, there are no contractors or service providers appointed, the unspent funds, they'll go back to the revenue fund. So even if we are saying as human settlements, we don't want to do reallocation. And the National Treasury as well, they don't exercise their right according to the Act to do reallocation. And if the project are not committed or there's no commitment, the funds are not committed, the funds that are not spent, they revert back to the revenue fund. Now, the difficulty comes in. As a sector, we have suffered a lot of budget cuts, 13.8 billion for the 3 financial years that are coming. And the reasons is, prior reasons that Treasury has alluded was the non-performance and the under-expenditures that were incurred. So hence our strategy is to say that for this financial year, we are going to be robust with the provinces and the metros. Hence, I did indicate that around August, we are starting the processes. The reason why we are using color coding is to say, let us start as early as before end of the second quarter to start with the interventions, to start looking at the projects, which projects are not moving on the ground and why are those projects not moving. So the strategy that we presented last week is one that we are going to start with around now. When we meet at the MINMEC, because we are going to have a MINMEC before end of September, we are going to start saying there are these provinces that we think that they've got challenges. Can you submit a recovery plan and tell us what is actually happening? Usually there is a team that will sit down and look from the national department comprising of all the branches to say, we put planning, we put grants management, we put M&E to say, let us look, what is actually happening? And then that team will even visit and see the project, because we don't want to move funds, but we want those funds to be spent in those particular provinces. But the challenge comes in when Treasury comes in and then the Act allows them to move funds. And then the other question that was put forward was the blacklisting. Treasury, National Treasury has introduced the Central System Database, we call it CSD, across the country. So across the country, the procurement, when we procure, all of us, we use that system. And that is the system that all the blacklisted service providers are sitting. So when you go into that system, you are able to see before you can procure, you need to go on the central system database, because it's going to tell you whether this service provider is tax compliant, whether this service provider has got issues with SARS, whether this service provider is or has got or has been blacklisted. So all the blacklistings are done through that system via the National Treasury. So we are able to see. So when you go on the system, because there's an MA number, I think it's MAAA number, all the service providers across the country that we are procuring as a country are sitting on that system. So that is the system that we are using. I think, Chair, we have covered all the questions, unless there are other ones that we have forgotten, and we are welcome to take the other questions, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, CFO and your team, for those elaborate responses. Let me welcome Honorable Ghana from RISE. He has joined us in this meeting. You are welcome, Honorable Ghana. Honorable Ditebe.
Thank you very much. Ash, I'm doubling up with the police. So when we finish early, I jump here. And when the agenda this side is interesting, I'll start here, Chair. But thanks for the welcome.
Yeah, that's the result of not winning a lot of votes. Honorable Ditebe.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks to the team from Human Settlements and the Minister in absentia. My question, Chair, relates to the Minister in her opening remarks earlier, explained in detail what led to a spike in terms of expenditure in the Free State and I think the Northwest as well. But would the department perhaps be able to tell us whether in respect of the money spent for the removal of asbestos roofs in the Free State, to the extent that that money has been spent, have they been able to verify that so many units of houses have had their roofs removed and replaced with appropriate roofing in the Free State, so that we know? I personally come from a township where such roofing has certainly not been removed altogether. It might very well be that in terms of project protocols, etc., project management protocols, they are still going to reach that area. But it is one issue that troubles people all the time. As you know, not only is that type of roofing unhealthy, unhygienic, but also it's very difficult to patch it once there's a hole in it because of the nature of the material that's been used. So that really is my question in relation to what the department presented as far as the issue of asbestos roofing is concerned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. CFO.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to request DDG Dumalisile as asbestos removal falls under here to respond to the question that was been posed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, the asbestos removal in the Free State was verified. Just like we sample for the BNGs and the sites, as previously raised by Honorable Mpiti, even with the asbestos projects, we did sampling. We had colleagues who visited the Free State area where the projects are happening to verify and confirm if this work has been done. And I think what is comforting, Chair, especially with the Free State one, given the previous ugly history with regards to the project, is that the Provincial Department for Human Settlements in the Free State did not necessarily do the project on their own, just to make sure that they give credibility and confidence with regards to their processes. They then appointed DBSA to run with this process, which is a very long-winded process because it has to go through quite a number of tedious processes. It's a professional area that is done by professionals, and it's done in a very professional manner, where you find the professionals, one, they have to make sure that they wear the proper clothing. Number two, they have to make sure that the occupants of the houses as they remove are not nearby. Number three, they have to make sure that the removed asbestos roofs are actually destroyed in an environmentally approved area and in a process that has been approved by the Department of Environment as well as the Department of Labor, and make sure that the replacement process is also proper. So if you go and verify those areas, you will find that they have replaced with beautiful, safe, and those what do you call them, roofs, health safe in terms of the expectations and in terms of the agreement between DBSA and the provincial department. So that work is happening. Unfortunately, Chair, it's moving very slow because of the high technicality that I've just mentioned and all these other protocols that they need to adhere to. So it's not just a once-off day. They have to first do the assessment, and then from there they have to confirm and do all these other protocols that I have just mentioned. And that's why with other provinces as well, there has been delays in other provinces in terms of implementation because they are still busy with the assessment processes using these professionals that they have hired. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just two things. You said you are busy with the review of the organizational structure. Although you are not done with it, but are you able to share with the committee of the direction of the review? Secondly, somewhere you reported that a meeting of the board, I suspect is a meeting of the board, did not correlate. That's why you did not perform on that objective. I think it's a meeting of the board of the First Home Finance. What did you do to correct that? CFO? Only those two.
Chair, I'm going to request ADDG Matupe to deal with the structure and then DDG Dumalisile to deal with the First Home Finance. In that order, thank you so much.
Thank you, CFO. There's the review of the organizational structure. We have already concluded the service delivery model that informs the macro organizational structure. The macro is at a level of senior management. So the SDM was concluded and we are now in a process of reviewing the macro, that is the organizational structure at SMS level. We have already received the minister's endorsement of the draft macro organizational structure. We have consulted the unions on it. They have given us the inputs. We have also went further to consult the SMS members in the department on the macro. We have finalized that consultation, Chair. We will be presenting the consolidated and the proposed options after the consultations to the executive management meeting tomorrow. And after that, we will be submitting this macro structure to the minister for approval. And once minister approves the macro structure, we will be now cascading it to the micro, which is the level 12 and below, which are below SMS level. There we will also ensure that the necessary consultations are done after we have reviewed that the structure at that level. As soon as we are done with the microstructure, Chair, we will be engaging in the review of the job descriptions of the posts, especially the affected posts and the job evaluation thereof. And then we will submit all this work to the Minister of Public Service and Administration because they have to concur before we can implement the approved and reviewed structure. So our time frame here that we have been given, Chair, is at the end of December to finalize these processes. But we are positive that we are moving in a correct pace that will allow us to finalize this process by end of December. Thank you. Thank you, CFO.
Thank you, Chairperson. And Chair, it's not necessarily the board, Chair. We have in the department a number of forums that we have established that are actually assisting us to coordinate the work that we do with provinces and metros. And similarly, with the First Home Finance work, we have a structure, a forum that meets on a quarterly basis. And it's this forum that could not meet at the time when it was meant to meet during the first quarter. And unfortunately, one may ask, can the sitting of the fora make the target not to be achieved? Chair, it depends on what we have on them as means of verification under our technical indicator descriptions. For this one in particular, we have set ourselves 4 areas that will assist us to confirm that in actual fact this work has been done. And it's the disbursement of the subsidies, the sitting of the First Home Finance Champions Forum, the identification of the challenges and recommendations with regards to the program, as well as the listing of subsidized disbursement. This is the same methodology that AG uses to assess as to whether we have achieved or not. And unfortunately, out of 4 of them, the 3 were achieved, only 1 was not achieved, meaning that the sitting of this meeting, and that's why it has resulted in the target having been deemed not to have been achieved. Now, in correcting this error, we have actually revised the terms of reference for the forum just to make sure that we are clear as to who must attend, and in the absence of that person, who must be the representative. And in this case, the challenge was those who are supposed to form part of the meeting were not available and did not make anyone available as a representative to actually represent them in the meeting so that the meeting can correct and we proceed. So we thought then let's rather make sure that it's documented on black and white so that then any person who's absent can always make sure that there is a representative for that particular province or for that particular metro. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, CFO.
Thanks very much. Honorable members, I guess all your questions were answered. Yeah, I don't see a hand. It means all your questions were answered. Thanks very much, CFO and your team. Honorable members, next week we will receive an elaborate presentation on challenges with the system to assist the Department of Human Settlement to digitize the beneficiary list. I think in that meeting, Secretary, if you can advise, in that meeting we'll also invite CETA. Already we got a report that the department is meeting with CETA on Monday. I think that will assist towards our meeting on Wednesday because we need to deal with it, like Honorable BT has said. And the CFO, as you were part of all our meetings, hope you are busy as assisting the minister with what has been submitted. The issues that we said you need to go and investigate so that we can get a feedback. If we can agree that we get that feedback to the Secretary's office by the 20th so that we are able to develop a way forward. Honorable Dlamini has suggested that at some stage, we must have a meeting where we address all issues, especially issues that are raised from the communities or our constituency, so that there's a focus. She says in her words that when she expects a written response, maybe it takes time. But all these issues, honorable members, must be consolidated in the Secretary's office so that we are able to send to the department. So that when we have that meeting, the department has done its job. They are ready to come and engage. Where there's a need for investigation, they will do so. By the time we meet, they are ready to engage. But it's important that we have this kind of a meeting because we are receiving complaints, concerns on a daily basis, and we can't just throw them under the carpet. So when we submit them to the department, normally we submit through the DG's office or the minister's office. We'll definitely request that we pay attention to them so that we resolve them. The issue of blocked projects, as you might have heard, CFO is a worry matter for the committee. And like you said, we agreed that we'll dedicate a meeting to discuss it. And in that meeting, we will also invite provinces that have many block projects. You remember when you reported to the meeting last week or a week before last, the provinces like Limpopo, they have 13 projects. Another province has 40, another one 30, and so on and so on. Out of the 100 we have identified. Now others have one, but we'll also get information as to if they have identified one, is it the only one in the province or what is happening? I think members will be able to guide in that regard. Honorable members will dedicate a meeting for that. I think the Office of the Secretary, together with the Office of the Chairperson, will look at the program for how we can go so that we don't lose all the swans. We will also appreciate CFO. Once the minister has given a go-ahead to the macro structure, if we can brief the committee. I don't think the committee would be interested in the structure going very down, but I suspect the committee will be interested in the top structure. And once you have that at macro level, once the minister is given a go-ahead, we can then brief the committee. CFO?
Thanks, Chair. All your inputs, Chair, have been noted. From the meeting that we held last week, when we came back, Chair, we did come up with an action list on all the recommendations that were made. What is it that we need to do? And the PLO did brief the minister in some of the issues. And we did receive as well, Chair and members, an email from your secretariat, from your office, with the details regarding Soshanguve and all the items. We were given a date whereby we need to submit the information. We are on top of it. We are having an action list that we are able to track all the issues, even including the issues that have been raised here today. We are going to develop an action list and all the issues that we need to respond to in writing. Bearing in mind the deadline that has been given into us, we will make sure that we respond in writing. And the issues of block project, yes, we are ready. Even yesterday it was presented. I think we have the information. Once we come back from the recess and we are given a date, we will be able to take the committee through on the issues of the block projects, because I know that has been a burning issue from the previous meeting, including today's meeting. So, Chair, we are keeping track of all the information. We will be submitting all the issues from all the meetings through your secretariat before the deadline. We'll make sure that we meet even the deadline, and the issues that we were requesting to escalate to the minister, we are also doing as such. We are escalating to Honorable Minister so that as well she can respond to your good selves in writing. Chair, we have also noted the recommendations for today's meeting as well. I think, yeah, we have covered all the issues, Chair. We are keeping track. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Honorable members, can we move to the next item, which is minutes? I deliberately jumped minutes because I wanted to give the minister an opportunity to talk to us before she could join another meeting. Now let's deal with minutes, Secretary. Or before that, yes.
No, I was going to ask if are you not releasing
maybe I'm requesting, can the department be excused as the committee is dealing with the minutes?
Okay, let me hear, Secretary, what you wanted to say.
No, Chairperson, I was going to find out if are you not releasing the department or but the CFO has read my man.
Okay. No, CFO, thanks very much. Your delegation can be released. We'll meet again next week.
Thank you so much, Chairperson and the members of the Portfolio Committee. God bless you further.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's flight the minutes.
Okay, Chair. Hello, Chair, the minutes of the 28th of August. Can you see?
Thanks very much. Honorable members, the minutes were sent to you all well in advance. I'll take the minutes as read. Can we go page by page? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Let's go up. Those are the deliberations by members and responses by the AG. Briefing by the department. Deliberations by members. Responses by the department. Resolutions, yeah. The Department of Human Settlements should brief the committee on the following: present plans to refurbish and repurpose old buildings, present the medium-term development plan for 24-29. Then closing remarks. I'm emphasizing the resolutions because we should not lose these resolutions until we are satisfied as a committee that we've brought them to their logical finality. Meeting agenda 13 hours. Are there corrections, amendments to the minutes? None. Can I get a motion for the adoption of the minutes?
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Magagula is moving. Can I get a seconder? Honorable Abada? Honorable Abada?
I second, Chair.
Honorable Abada is seconding. Is there a different view? Nothing. Minutes are adopted as such. I think that was our last item. Honorable Secretary, anything?
Nothing, Chair, for now. Thank you.
Nothing for now. Thanks very much, honorable members. If there is anything that needs the attention of members, the secretary will communicate through the normal channels to members. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time. I know most of you are doubling, some of you are in by-elections. We wish you the best as you go with your by-elections. Till we meet again next week. Enjoy the rest of the day. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.